The clown in the dark. I've always had a deep fear of clowns. It started when I was a kid, watching a late-night horror movie at a sleepover. The grotesque grin, the soulless eyes, and the painted mask of false cheerfulness, it burrowed deep into my psyche. I never told anyone, of course. People mock fears they don't understand. This irrational terror followed me into adulthood, even though I had convinced myself it was childish nonsense. At least, I thought it was nonsense until last night. It began as an ordinary evening. I had finished a long day at work and was desperate to unwind. A storm brewed outside, drenching the city in torrents of rain. My apartment felt like a cocoon, warm and safe from the chaos outside. I brewed some coffee, grabbed a blanket, and settled in for a quiet evening. That was when the power went out. At first, I thought it was just my building, but when I peered out the window, I saw the entire street cloaked in darkness. The storm must have knocked out the grid. The shadows outside seemed to pulse, alive with the sound of rain hammering against the pavement. I lit a few candles, trying to shake off the unease that crept up my spine. Then came the knock. It was faint at first, almost drowned out by the rain. But as I strained to listen, it came again, 3 sharp raps against the glass of my living room window. I live on the 5th floor. I froze, my breath hitching. The rational part of me tried to dismiss it as a trick of the storm, some loose branch or debris caught in the wind. But my gut told me otherwise. Summoning all my courage, I approached the window, clutching a flashlight like a weapon. When I shined the beam through the glass, my heart stopped. There, standing on the fire escape, was a clown. The paint on its face was smeared, as if it had been crying or bleeding. Its crimson lips stretched into an impossibly wide grin, revealing yellowed teeth. Its eyes were wide and unblinking, staring directly at me. It raised a gloved hand and waved slowly, mockingly. I stumbled back, my mind racing. There was no way someone could climb the fire escape in this storm, let alone stand there in such perfect stillness. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, but the screen was dead. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Another knock. This time, it wasn't from the window. It came from the front door. Panic clawed at my chest as I turned toward the sound. The door rattled slightly as if someone or something was testing the handle. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my knuckles white as I gripped the handle. Slowly, I approached the door, my bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. The knocking had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. Then a voice, soft, sing-song, and dripping with malice. "Let me in." It was coming from the other side of the door. The voice was high-pitched, almost childlike, but there was something profoundly wrong about it. It sounded like it was struggling to mimic human speech. I backed away, my heart pounding. "Go away!" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. The voice giggled, a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. "Why don't you come out and play?" My blood turned to ice. I glanced back at the window, expecting to see the clown still there, but it was gone. The fire escape was empty, the rain cascading down in sheets. The lights flickered, momentarily illuminating the room, and I saw it, standing in the corner. The clown was inside my apartment. It was taller than I had realized, its gangly limbs bent at unnatural angles. The once vivid colors of its costume were muted, streaked with grime, and what I prayed wasn't blood. Its head tilted to the side, watching me with that same unblinking stare. The knife slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. "How?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. It didn't answer. Instead, it took a step forward, its oversized shoes squeaking against the floor. I bolted. I ran into my bedroom, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The handle jiggled. It was followed by a slow, deliberate knock. "Don't be scared," the voice cooed. "I just want to make you smile." I grabbed my dresser and shoved it against the door, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The knocking stopped, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear any sign of movement. Then, from behind me, a whisper. "I found you." I whipped around, and there it was, crouched on the ceiling like a spider. its head twisted upside down, that horrifying grin inches from my face. I screamed, the sound ripping from my throat as I stumbled back. My foot caught on the edge of the bed, and I fell hard, my head slamming against the floor. Darkness swallowed me. When I woke, the room was empty. The storm had passed, and sunlight streamed through the window. My head throbbed, and dried blood crusted the back of my skull where I had hit the floor. I cautiously checked every corner of the apartment, but there was no sign of the clown. Had it been a dream? A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear? I tried to convince myself it was, but deep down, I knew the truth. As I sat on the couch, trying to calm my nerves, I noticed something on the coffee table. A red balloon, its surface glistening like freshly spilled blood, bobbed gently in the air. Tied to its string was a note. In jagged, childlike handwriting it read, "See you tonight." The midnight laughter. It all started with a dare. My friends and I were bored one Saturday night, flipping through horror movies and joking about urban legends. That's when Rachel brought up the old story about the laughing clown. "Have you ever heard about the clown who roams the woods outside town?" she asked, her eyes glinting with mischief. We all shook our heads. "They say he only shows up at night, looking for anyone foolish enough to call him out. If he hears you laugh, he comes for you." We chuckled nervously, brushing it off as one of those silly local myths meant to scare kids. But Rachel wasn't done. "There's a spot in the woods where people claim to have seen him. The Clown's Hollow. I dare you to go there with me tonight." Jake and Sam immediately scoffed, but I hesitated. There was something about her tone, the way her voice dropped to a whisper when she said tonight, that made my stomach twist. But I didn't want to seem like a coward. "Fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's do it." We grabbed flashlights and piled into Rachel's car, driving toward the edge of town. The road narrowed as we neared the forest, the trees on either side like towering shadows. When we parked, the moon was high, casting an eerie glow over the trail. Clown's Hollow was about a mile in, Rachel said. The walk felt endless, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound breaking the silence. The further we went, the darker it got. "Do you believe in the story?" I asked Rachel, trying to keep my mind off the oppressive darkness around us. She smirked. "Not really, but it's fun to see who chickens out first." Jake rolled his eyes. "This is stupid. There's no clown." A faint giggle cut through the air. We froze, the sound echoing faintly through the trees. It was high-pitched and distorted, like a broken child's toy. "Did you hear that?" Sam whispered, his voice barely audible. Rachel laughed nervously. "Probably just an animal." We kept walking, but the air felt heavier. The giggle came again, closer this time. My skin prickled as I gripped my flashlight tighter, scanning the trees. Then we saw it. About 20 feet ahead, standing perfectly still in the middle of the trail, was a clown. Its face was pale, the red paint around its mouth smeared into a grotesque grin. Its clothes were torn and filthy, the vibrant colors muted by dirt and grime. It held a balloon in one hand, its string dangling limp in the still air. Jake cursed under his breath. Rachel's smirk disappeared. "Okay," Rachel said, her voice shaky. "This is some kind of prank, right? Someone's messing with us." The clown didn't move. "Hello," Sam called out, his voice cracking. No response. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears as the silence stretched on. Then the clown tilted its head, just slightly, and laughed. The sound wasn't human. It was warped, an unnatural blend of wheezing and high-pitched giggles that sent chills racing down my spine. Rachel took a step back. "We should go." "No kidding," Jake hissed, already turning around. But when we turned back toward the trail, the clown was there. I don't know how it moved so fast. It was impossible. But there it stood, blocking the way we came. "How?" I whispered, my throat dry. The clown raised its free hand and pointed at us, its grin widening unnaturally. "What do you want?" Rachel shouted, her voice trembling. It didn't answer. Instead, it began to move. Not walking, but gliding toward us, its feet barely touching the ground. Panic set in, and we bolted. Branches whipped at my face as we ran blindly through the trees, the flashlight beams bouncing erratically. Behind us, the laughter followed, growing louder and more distorted. "Keep going," Rachel screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the sound of that horrid giggle. We burst into a small clearing, gasping for breath. For a moment, the laughter stopped. "I think we lost it," Jake panted, his hands on his knees. But I knew better. The silence wasn't relief, it was a warning. I turned around, my flashlight shaking, and there it was. The clown stood at the edge of the clearing, its balloon now glowing faintly in the dark. It cocked its head to the side, as if studying us, before reaching into its tattered costume. "What is it doing?" Sam whispered, his voice trembling. The clown pulled out something small and shiny. "A knife." "Run!" Rachel shouted. We didn't need to be told twice. We tore through the woods, my lungs burning and legs screaming for rest. But no matter how fast we ran, the laughter was always just behind us, growing louder and more maniacal. Jake tripped, his scream cutting through the night. I skidded to a stop, turning back to help him. The clown was there before I could reach him. I watched in horror as it loomed over Jake, its knife glinting in the moonlight. He screamed, but the sound was cut off as the blade came down. "Jake!" Rachel screamed, but I grabbed her arm and pulled her away. "We can't help him," I shouted, choking on the words. We stumbled back onto the trail, the laughter now deafening. Sam was ahead of us, but when we caught up to him, he was frozen, staring at something in the distance. The clown was there, waiting for us, its knife dripping with something dark. It took a step forward, its balloon bobbing with the movement. "No," Rachel whimpered. "This can't be real." The clown stopped and tilted its head, as if amused by her fear. Then it laughed again, a deep, guttural sound that made my stomach churn. I don't remember how I made it out of the woods. My mind was a blur of terror and adrenaline. When I finally reached the car, I realized I was alone. Sam and Rachel were gone. I sat in the driver's seat, trembling and covered in scratches, the laughter still echoing in my ears. I haven't seen my friends since that night, but sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I hear it again, that high-pitched giggle, faint and distant, like it's waiting for me to laugh back.